All right. So have you ever gotten that feeling, uh, like when someone is sort of like subtly kind of pulling your strings in a conversation, or like they're kind of like nudging you to do something you hadn't really like planned on? It just makes you wonder what is really going on there, right? Like
Yeah.
behind those seemingly innocent smiles. I remember this one time I was hanging out with my friend, we'll call her Sarah, right? And she convinced me to join her for a pottery class. Pottery. Me. The closest I'd ever gotten to clay was, well, I guess accidentally stepping in mud. But Sarah, bless her heart, she paints this picture of us like unleashing our inner artists, creating these masterpieces that would
Mhm.
rival Michelangelo himself. So fast forward a few hours, and let's just say that my lopsided mug looked a lot more like a melted candle than a work of art. Sarah, on the other hand, she sculpted this like super elegant vase. It could have been plucked straight from a museum. It was impressive, but also a little suspicious looking back on it. I realize now that Sarah was this master manipulator, but I doubt she even realized it herself. And they got me thinking about like how much of our daily interactions are actually shaped by these like subtle and sometimes invisible forces of influence. So buckle up, Buttercup, because today we're going to do a deep dive all about manipulation. We're going to learn how to spot it, the tools it uses, and what it reveals about the wonderfully complex world of human behavior. So for this deep dive, we're going to be using a book called Manipulation, Dark Psychology, to manipulate and control people as our guide. Now, before you get any ideas about using this knowledge for evil, let me just say, the goal here isn't to turn you into some Machiavellian mastermind. It's about empowering you and giving you the tools to recognize manipulation when you see it. And, protect yourself from those who might try to use it against you. So what exactly is manipulation anyway? Well, the book defines it as this intentional influence that's aimed at changing someone's behavior, and usually to benefit the manipulator. But here's where it gets interesting. Manipulation isn't always a bad thing. Think about it. Charities use persuasive language to encourage donations. That's a good thing, right? Governments launch campaigns to promote public health. Also, generally, good use of influence. Even parents, those masters of manipulation, use all sorts of tactics to get their kids to, oh, I don't know, eat their vegetables or do their homework. The key here is to understand that manipulation exists on a spectrum. There's a difference between using a gentle nudge to encourage someone to make a positive choice and, let's say, using deceit and coercion to exploit them for personal gain. So as we delve deeper into this topic, we'll be exploring those ethical gray areas, those situations where manipulation can be used for both good and, well, not so good purposes. Now, the book breaks down the art of manipulation into 3 core tools. It's kind of like a manipulator's toolkit, if you will. The first tool is power. But here's the twist. It's not just about brute force or holding a higher position. Think about my friend Sarah in that pottery class. She wasn't my boss. She didn't have any real authority over me, but she still managed to get me to do something I wouldn't normally do. So how did she do it? Well, the book explains that true power in manipulation lies in the perceived ability to help others succeed. It's about making someone believe that you have something that they need, something that will help them achieve their goals. And that perception gives you leverage, the ability to influence their behavior. So in Sarah's case, she cleverly positioned herself as someone who could help me unleash my artistic potential. Even though, let's be honest, that potential was probably buried somewhere deep, deep down. She created the illusion that I needed this pottery class, that it would somehow benefit me, and while I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. The second tool in the manipulator's arsenal is persuasion. Now, persuasion itself isn't inherently bad. It's simply the art of using information to convince someone to act in a certain way. But here's where things can get a little slippery. Sometimes that information is, shall we say, massaged a bit. Think about those slick advertising campaigns that highlight all the amazing features of a product. They conveniently omit any potential downsides. Or those political speeches that paint a rosy picture of the future while glossing over any inconvenient truths. Persuasion is everywhere, from the carefully crafted words of a salesperson to the way we present ourselves in job interviews. And the more persuasive someone is, the more likely they are to influence our thoughts and actions. The third, and perhaps most sneaky tool of manipulation, is deception. Now, deception can range from outright lies to more subtle forms of information control. Think about those Nigerian prince email scams. They're using deception to make people believe they'll get rich quick, even though it's all a big fat lie. But deception can also be much more subtle. It can involve concealing crucial details or distorting the truth just enough to get someone to believe what you want them to believe, or even playing on someone's emotions to cloud their judgment. Deception preys on our hopes and fears and desires, and it can lead us to make decisions that aren't truly in our best interest. And the scariest part is, we're often completely unaware that we're being deceived. Now, I know all this talk of power, persuasion, and deception might be making you feel a little paranoid, but don't worry, that's actually a good thing. Awareness is the first step to protection. By understanding these tools, you're already one step ahead of those who might try to use them against you. But knowing the tools is just the beginning. To truly master the art of recognizing and resisting manipulation, we need to dive deeper. We need to explore the specific tactics and techniques that manipulators use to pull our strings. And that's exactly what we'll be doing in the next part of this deep dive. So grab your thinking caps, folks, because things are about to get really interesting. Okay, so we've got our basic tools of manipulation: power, persuasion, and deception. But now let's get down to the real nitty gritty, the actual tactics that these manipulators use to, manipulate. And for this, we're going to stick with our guide, the book, Manipulation, Dark Psychology to Manipulate and Control People. It's like our playbook for decoding this subtle art of influence. One of the classic techniques, one that I'm sure you've probably even encountered yourself, is that good old carrot and stick approach. That age-old strategy of rewards and punishment. I mean, it's a tactic that's as old as time itself. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Our parents used it on us. Eat your veggies and you'll get dessert. Talk back and you're grounded. Teachers used it on us too. Do your homework and you'll get a gold star. Disrupt the class and you'll get detention. Well, and even our bosses use it on us. Exceed your sales targets and you'll get a bonus. Miss your deadlines and you'll get a stern talking to. But here's where things get interesting, and this is something that the book really highlights really well. Sometimes this whole carrot and stick approach can totally backfire, especially if it's not used thoughtfully. Let me give you an example. It's a little story from my own work life. A while back, I was on a project with this colleague. We'll call him Mark. Mark wasn't exactly known for his dedication, let's just say. He had this habit of kind of disappearing when there was actual work to be done, leaving the rest of us to pick up the slack. Mm-hmm. So one day after Mark had pulled another one of his vanishing acts, I decided I was going to try the stick approach. I just gave him the cold shoulder. I was hoping that this little taste of social isolation would motivate him to step up his game a little. But you want to know what happened. Instead of shaping up a gullage, Mark just gravitated toward other colleagues who were more welcoming. He started spending more time with them, collaborating on projects, even going out for after-work drinks. And guess what? Those colleagues ended up benefiting from his, let's call them unique talents. Meanwhile, I was left feeling frustrated and, kind of a little foolish. My little attempt to manipulate Mark had totally backfired. It pushed him further away instead of pulling it closer. So what's the lesson here? Well, the book suggests that while the carrot and stick approach can be effective in some situations, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's crucial to understand the individual, their motivations, their fears, their desires, before you go wielding that carrot or the stick. Because what motivates one person might completely demotivate another, and sometimes the best approach is to just ditch the carrot and stick altogether, and instead focus on building genuine connections and fostering trust and creating a collaborative environment where everyone feels valued and respected. And speaking of understanding individual motivations, that brings us to another fascinating and often more insidious form of manipulation: emotional manipulation. Emotional manipulation is all about, you guessed it, playing on people's emotions to influence their behavior. Think about those classic guilt trips. Oh, you're not going to visit your poor old mother after all I've done for you. Or those subtle little digs that are disguised as compliments like, wow, you're looking well rested today. Must have been nice to sleep in while everyone else was working. Ah. Or even those like seductive whispers that promise love and adoration in exchange for, well, you know. Emotional manipulation can be incredibly effective because it targets our deepest vulnerabilities. Our insecurities, our fears of rejection, our longing for connection. And it's often used by those closest to us, partners, family members, even friends. They know our weak spots better than anyone else. The book dives deep into all the different tactics of emotional manipulation, but one that I found particularly insightful is the use of fear. Manipulators who use fear often create a sense of urgency. This feeling that if you don't act now, do you, something terrible is going to happen. They might threaten you with consequences, real or imagined, or they might play on your anxieties about the future. And when we're in a state of fear, our rational thinking goes right out the window. It makes us a lot more susceptible to their demands. Think about those like doomsday prophets who predict the end of the world unless we follow their specific set of beliefs. Or those fear-mongering news headlines that play on our anxieties about crime, terrorism, or economic collapse. These tactics are all designed to trigger our fight or flight response, and that bypasses our critical thinking and makes us way more likely to comply with their demands. So how do we protect ourselves from emotional manipulation? Well, the first step is awareness. The more we understand these tactics, the better equipped we are to recognize them when they're being used against us. And once we've spotted the manipulation, we can take a step back, calm our emotions, and assess the situation rationally. The book also suggests setting boundaries. You make it clear that you're not going to tolerate certain behaviors. And sometimes the best defense is simply to walk away. Remove yourself from the situation and from the manipulator's influence. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is all getting a bit heavy. Is there like any aspect of manipulation that's not so dark and twisty? And the answer is surprisingly yes. There's one aspect of manipulation that's often seen as a positive quality, even something to be admired. And that, my friends, is charisma. Charisma, that elusive quality that some people just seem to have, that magnetic pull that just draws others to them, that effortless charm that makes them so persuasive and so influential. But here's where things get interesting, and this is something that the book explores in detail. Charisma at its core is often an illusion of power. Think about those charismatic leaders who inspire millions with their speeches, their vision, their seemingly unshakable confidence. Or those celebrities who captivate us with their charm, their wit, their larger-than-life personalities. Now, I'm not saying that all charismatic people are manipulative or insincere, but the book suggests that charisma, at its core, is about projecting an image. It's about creating an aura of power and competence, even if that power isn't necessarily backed up by substance. The book breaks down charisma into two key components: confidence and wit. Confidence, that unwavering belief in oneself, creates the impression of competence, making us more likely to trust and follow those who exude it. And wit, that ability to think quickly and make clever remarks, to entertain and engage others. It adds a layer of charm and likability, making us more receptive to their message. So charisma, in a way, is a form of social engineering. It's like this carefully crafted performance that's designed to influence our perceptions and behaviors. And while it can be used for good, like to inspire positive change, to motivate others to achieve great things, it can also be used for less noble purposes, to manipulate, to deceive, to gain power and control. Now, this isn't to say that we should be suspicious of everyone who exudes charm and confidence, but it's important to remember that charisma, like any other tool of manipulation, can be used for both good and bad. And by understanding its mechanisms, we can become more discerning observers, less easily swayed by surface appearances, and more focused on the substance beneath the charm. So as we continue our deep dive into the world of manipulation, let's keep in mind that this is a complex and nuanced topic.
There are no easy answers, and there's no black and white distinctions between good and evil. But by exploring the tools, the tactics, and the ethical implications of manipulation. We can become more aware, more discerning, and ultimately more empowered individuals. Now we're going to delve into a particularly fascinating aspect of manipulation, the question of whether it's always wrong. Can there be such a thing as ethical manipulation? We're going to tackle this tricky but crucial question right after this. Okay, so let's get back into our deep dive on manipulation. It's been fascinating uncovering all these layers of manipulation, from power dynamics to charisma and stuff. But there's one more thing that we haven't touched on yet, and it's something that the book really emphasizes. It's this idea that manipulation isn't always this deliberate, calculated thing. Sometimes it happens without us even realizing it. The book actually calls it unintentional manipulation. Yeah, you heard that right. If you're pulling strings without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it's we're running on autopilot, but those autopilot settings might accidentally be sending out manipulative signals.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, that makes sense. So if I tend to get all passive aggressive when I'm annoyed, that could be unintentional manipulation. I'm not directly saying what's bothering me, but I'm hoping that my behavior will kind of nudge the other person to figure it out and make things right.
Ooh, it's kind of amazing how these seemingly small behaviors can actually have such a big impact on our relationships. It really makes you think about your own habits, doesn't it? Are there things that I do without even realizing it that might be coming across as manipulative, right? It's like getting feedback from the world around you. And once you've gotten that feedback, you can start making changes. But that probably takes a lot of self-awareness and honesty, right? Yeah.
So instead of resorting to those subconscious tactics, we need to learn how to express our needs and desires directly and honestly. It sounds like this whole unintentional manipulation thing is really about, personal growth. It's about becoming more aware of ourselves and our impact on others, and ultimately becoming better, more authentic communicators. Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. It's I've been handed this decoder ring for human behavior, and now I'm seeing manipulation everywhere, both the intentional and the unintentional kind. But the good news is I feel empowered. I have the tools to navigate this complex world of influence with, more awareness, more integrity, and maybe even a little more finesse. So to wrap things up, let's remember that manipulation in all its forms is an integral part of the human experience. It's neither inherently good nor bad, but it's a tool that can be used for both positive and negative ends. The key is to become aware of its dynamics and understand its tools and tactics, and use this knowledge wisely and ethically. Until next time, stay sharp out there, and remember, the best way to resist manipulation is to become a master of your own thoughts, actions, and intentions.